Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to take this powerful message about spotting dangerous individuals and protecting yourself with ancient wisdom and reshape it into something that hits you right where you live. This isn't just information. It's a survival guide for your emotional and psychological well-being. Here are 3 hooks to pull you in, because what you're about to hear, it could change everything you thought you knew about the people around you. Hook 1. Imagine the most charming person you've ever met. Magnetic, attentive, like they were tailor-made just for you. What if that perfect connection wasn't fate, but a carefully crafted trap? Hook 2. Have you ever questioned your own sanity after a conversation, wondering if you imagined things you know happened? That dizzying confusion might not be you. It could be deliberate psychological warfare. Hook 3. What if some people see you, not as a human being with feelings and worth, but as a resource, like a battery to be drained or a tool to be used and discarded when you're no longer needed? Stick with me, because understanding these chilling realities and knowing how to protect your inner world is the most important defense you have. We're going to uncover the hidden signs, connect them to timeless Stoic wisdom, and build your shield against those who walk among us disguised as friends, lovers, even family. They look just like everyone else, charming, confident, sometimes even magnetic. But behind that polished smile and smooth talk, there might be a predator hiding in plain sight. These individuals can be psychopathic, and they walk among us every single day, disguised as friends, lovers, co-workers, or even family. You often don't realize what's happening until you feel drained, confused, questioning your own reality, and they've already moved on to their next target. Experts suggest that around 1 in 100 people have psychopathic traits, meaning you've likely already met one, or perhaps you're dealing with one right now. Unless you know the signs, they can keep you under their spell, manipulating, gaslighting, and taking everything they can without a shred of guilt. But here's the thing, you are not powerless. Understanding these signs is the first step to recognizing the danger and protecting yourself. These aren't just abstract concepts. They're real-world red flags with examples you might have experienced or are living through right now. Missing even one sign could cost you years of emotional abuse, broken trust, and wrecked self-esteem. This behavior isn't random. It's often a deliberate strategy. Let's get into the unmistakable signs. Sign number 1. Superficial charm and initial manipulation. Have you ever met someone who instantly made you feel deeply seen and understood? Someone who seemed to effortlessly match your humor, your passions, even your insecurities, making you feel like they were made just for you. Initially, this feels incredible, like destiny. They remember the smallest details you share, show up for you in ways others haven't, and say all the right words at exactly the right time. It's easy to think, finally, someone truly gets me. But this often isn't serendipity. It's strategy. This is how a psychopath typically enters your life, not with obvious hostility, but with charm so precisely crafted, it feels like genuine connection, perhaps even love. However, it's manipulation in disguise. They aren't connecting with your authentic self. They are studying you. Every compliment, every shared interest they suddenly develop, every seemingly thoughtful gesture is a tool. They're using these tactics to probe your mind, learning what motivates you, what you crave, and what you fear. It's not affection, it's reconnaissance. Think of them as emotional tacticians. They learn early in life to mimic empathy and the appearance of connection, but they don't genuinely feel these emotions. They know that by mirroring your values, dreams, and vulnerabilities, they can effectively lower your defenses and gain your trust rapidly. So when you mention feeling burned out at work, and they become the one person who completely understands your frustration, it feels like a deep bond forming. In their reality, they're simply identifying a potential weakness to exploit later. Or if you casually mentioned loving true crime documentaries, suddenly they've planned a binge-watching night with snacks, referencing obscure details you barely remember sharing. At first, this feels flattering and validating, but look closer. This behavior isn't driven by shared joy. It's about control. It's about quickly building the illusion of intimacy so that you drop your guard faster than you normally would. This is the mechanism behind love bombing. It's not chaotic or spontaneous, it's systematic. You're bombarded with validation, affection, intense attention, and constant availability. Your phone might be constantly buzzing with sweet texts, and they might start talking about a future together within weeks. They make you feel uniquely chosen, special, and safe. The critical truth is that this intense attention is conditional. The moment you assert a boundary, say no, or simply take back a little control, perhaps you don't respond instantly, or you question something they've said, the switch can flip dramatically. The warmth vanishes, replaced by coldness, distance, or even irritation. You're left bewildered, wondering what you did wrong. This sudden shift is the first major red flag. Superficial charm that disappears the moment you stop complying with their unspoken demands or expectations. It's disorienting because their initial persona seemed so genuine. What you're witnessing is the mask slipping, even if just for a moment. You weren't in a true relationship. You were part of a transaction. And when that transaction no longer benefits them, they can disengage with shocking speed. The psychological impact of this is profound. You begin to second-guess yourself, wondering if you're overreacting or if they're simply having a bad day. You try to rationalize their inconsistent behavior because the contrast between the charming facade and the cold reality is so stark, it's difficult to process. But this emotional whiplash isn't accidental. It's a deliberate tactic. It keeps you uncertain, off balance, and ultimately easier to control. So, how do you protect yourself from this dazzling but dangerous charm offensive? This is where Stoic philosophy offers incredible clarity. A core principle in Stoicism is distinguishing between what you can control, your thoughts, judgments, actions, and what you cannot control, other people's behavior, external events. A Stoic doesn't aim to control others. They focus on mastering their own internal state. This means recognizing when your emotions are being intensely stirred by external flattery or sudden coldness. It requires slowing down, observing the objective facts of the situation, and resisting the powerful urge to react emotionally to their calculated displays. It means pausing to ask yourself, am I genuinely being loved and connected with, or am I being studied and strategically targeted? When you feel overwhelmed by someone's charm, when they seem too perfect too quickly, hit the pause button. Real, authentic connection develops gradually over time through mutual understanding, shared experiences, and consistent behavior, not through a script of tailored gestures. If someone is rushing intimacy, overwhelming you with excessive praise, and seeming to adapt to everything you say without any natural friction or genuine disagreement, that's often not authenticity. It's a sign of manipulation. Learn to trust your gut instincts. Often your intuition will send you subtle warnings before your conscious mind fully processes the inconsistencies. That uneasy feeling when someone seems too good to be true isn't necessarily paranoia. It could be your brain's pattern recognition system picking up on subtle cues that don't align. You don't need to panic or confront them aggressively. You simply need to observe, stay grounded, take space to think clearly, and allow time to reveal their true nature. Because psychopaths generally cannot maintain the performance indefinitely. Eventually, their underlying self, the lack of genuine emotion and the strategic intent will surface, particularly when you assert a boundary or disrupt their need for control. Ultimately, Stoicism isn't about suppressing your emotions. It's about understanding them and refusing to allow someone else to manipulate them. You can remain kind, warm, and open, but do so with your eyes wide open. Recognize that not every seemingly perfect connection is real. Some are carefully constructed traps disguised as love. So, if someone's affection feels less like a steady, warm glow and more like an intense, overwhelming spotlight, too intense, too perfectly tailored, too sudden, pause, take a step back. That feeling is likely your first sign. Their charm isn't a gift, it's bait. The sooner you recognize it, the sooner you can protect yourself from the significant damage that will inevitably follow. Sign number 2. Pathological lying and manipulation. Imagine this. You're replaying a conversation in your mind, heart pounding. You know what someone said yesterday. You remember it word for word. But now, they are calmly claiming they never said any of it. Not only that, they're subtly implying that you misunderstood, you overreacted, perhaps you even imagined the entire conversation. They appear completely collected and confident while you are spiraling, suddenly second-guessing your memory, your perceptions, maybe even your sanity. Did I misinterpret? Was I too sensitive? Am I just overthinking everything? This is the terrifying reality of pathological lying and psychological manipulation playing out in the real world. It's not just abstract psychological jargon. It's a daily experience that relentlessly chips away at your sense of reality. If you've ever been caught in such a situation, you are absolutely not alone. This is the second major sign you might be dealing with a psychopath, and it's arguably one of the most dangerous because it doesn't just confuse you. It actively attempts to rewire your perception of truth. Individuals with psychopathic traits don't lie in the way most people do, perhaps, to avoid minor conflict or save face. Their lying is often compulsive, seemingly effortless, and highly strategic. They might lie even when the truth would be simpler or easier. Why? Because lying gives them a powerful sense of control. By controlling the narrative, they control your perception of events, other people, and eventually, they exert control over you. They construct elaborate stories with disturbing ease about their past, their relationships, their jobs, their emotions. They might share a seemingly traumatic experience to elicit your sympathy, only for you to later notice that the details of the story constantly shift. What was once described as a tragic accident might transform into a story of violent betrayal, depending on who they're talking to or what serves their purpose at the moment. One day they claim they were raised by a strict single father. The next, it's a story about a neglectful mother. You start noticing these inconsistencies, these cracks in their story. But each time you try to question them or point out a discrepancy, they skillfully twist the narrative again. They might react with sudden anger, accuse you of mistrusting them, or immediately play the victim, turning the focus back onto your supposed flaws or lack of faith in them. Somehow you often end up feeling guilty just for asking a reasonable question. This is where it escalates into truly toxic territory, gaslighting. This is a deliberate form of psychological abuse intended to make you question your memory, your sanity, and what you know to be true. They might say something cruel or hurtful, and later adamantly insist it never happened. They make promises, break them without hesitation, and then deny ever agreeing in the first place. They push your emotional buttons, provoke a reaction, and then accuse you of being overly emotional or unstable when you respond. Over time, this relentless assault on your reality erodes your ability to trust yourself. You stop speaking up about inconsistencies. You begin to filter your thoughts and memories through a thick fog of self-doubt, constantly wondering if you're misremembering or making things up. Let's consider an example. Suppose they tell you that your coworker, Jen, has been spreading rumors about you behind your back, framing it as them looking out for you. Meanwhile, they're telling Jen that you have a problem with her. They actively stir conflict from both sides, quietly relishing the chaos they've created. This tactic serves to isolate you, making you feel paranoid and unsure of who to trust. In this scenario, the only person who seems to understand what's going on, the only one who appears to have your back, is the manipulator themselves. But it's a calculated trap. They've often manufactured the drama specifically to ensure they remain the central, indispensable figure in your emotional world. This tactic, known as triangulation, is devastatingly effective. It cuts you off from your existing support network while simultaneously elevating their perceived role and importance in your life. Psychologically, what you are truly dealing with is someone who fundamentally lacks a functioning moral compass. Psychopaths do not experience guilt, remorse, or the weight of their lies in the way a person with typical emotional capacity does. Their lies aren't accidental slips of the tongue. They are precision-guided weapons, and they wield them with disturbing skill. They understand the emotional impact of words on others, which is why they often embed just enough truth into their lies to make them seem plausible. They study you closely to identify the version of reality you are most likely to accept and believe. And once they find it, they stick to that fabricated version with unnerving conviction, sometimes even when presented with undeniable proof to the contrary. So, what can you possibly do when you find yourself ensnared in this type of relentless mind game? Again, Stoicism offers a powerful lifeline. A central tenet of Stoic thought is learning to discern what is within your sphere of control and what is outside of it. You absolutely cannot control another person's decision to lie or their stubborn refusal to acknowledge the truth, but you possess complete control over your response to it. Stoicism cultivates emotional discipline, but this isn't about becoming cold or detached. It means training yourself to observe the situation and their behavior without immediately reacting, from a place of confusion, hurt, or anger. It means deliberately stepping back and asking yourself, is this objective reality, or is this a calculated attempt at manipulation? You don't need to convince them of the truth. You don't need to Wendy the argument or force them to confess. Your primary objective must be to protect your own mind, your clarity, and your inner peace. A practical Stoic-aligned strategy in this situation is documentation. Write down conversations, dates, specific events, and promises made. Do this not to build a case against them, but to create an undeniable record for yourself. This serves as hard evidence you can refer back to when the lies and gaslighting make your brain start to waver and doubt your own memory. Talk to trusted friends, family members, or a therapist who are outside the manipulator's sphere of influence. Let them serve as your external reality check, reminding you of who you are and validating what you know actually happened. Most crucially, when you consistently notice these patterns, the truth constantly shifting, your memories being challenged, being made to feel unstable or crazy simply for asking clarifying questions, recognize it for precisely what it is: psychological warfare. You are not inherently broken or flawed. You are being systematically broken down by someone who actively sees your confusion, your self-doubt, and your questioning as opportunities to further control you. This is your second unmistakable sign. You are dealing with a psychopath, pathological lying, and psychological manipulation. And it's not merely a reason for concern. It is a definitive reason to create distance, and if possible, run. The longer you remain engaged, the further you risk drifting from your own grounded reality. And once that connection to yourself is significantly fractured, the journey back to clarity and self-trust becomes an immeasurably harder battle. Sign number 3. Lack of empathy and emotional depth. Have you ever bravely decided to pour your heart out to someone, sharing your deepest struggles, your heartbreak, your fears, only to be met with a chillingly hollow stare or a response that feels unnervingly flat, too perfect, and ultimately makes your skin crawl? You sit there, emotionally exposed and vulnerable, desperately hoping for comfort or understanding, only to feel like your pain simply bounced off an impenetrable wall. That profoundly isolating moment when someone hears your most tender vulnerability and reacts as if they are dispassionately observing a scene in a movie, rather than truly living the emotional experience with you. That is a stark glimpse into what it feels like to be in the presence of a person who fundamentally lacks empathy. And this is the third major sign you might be dealing with a psychopath. It's crucial to understand that psychopaths can observe emotion in others. They can recognize it, accurately label it, e.g., you seem sad, and even imitate the outward expressions or conventional responses to it with unsettling precision. However, they do not feel emotion, particularly the feeling of empathy, in the same way healthy humans do. The interaction you have with them, especially regarding emotional matters, is not genuine connection. It is often a performance. It's akin to watching an actor deliver a flawless monologue on stage. All the technical elements are perfectly in place. The right words are spoken, the appropriate facial expressions are displayed, but something essential is missing. That vital, intangible human spark, the authentic emotional core, is absent. Empathy is the very heartbeat of deep emotional connection between people. It is the capacity that makes us instinctively flinch when we see someone else in pain. It's what allows us to sit in quiet solidarity with a grieving friend and genuinely feel a resonance of their sorrow within our own chest. Psychopaths simply do not possess this capacity. They are, in essence, emotionally deaf. They perceive your feelings much like someone watching a movie on mute. They can describe the plot points, the actions occurring on screen, but the emotional weight, the feeling itself, does not register or touch them internally. Because of this fundamental lack of emotional resonance, their responses to suffering or vulnerability can feel bizarrely off or inappropriate. When you are experiencing anxiety, heartbreak, or distress, they may offer advice that sounds logically correct, but feels utterly robotic and devoid of warmth. Or perhaps even more disturbingly, they might respond with visible annoyance or impatience, because your distress is inconvenient or disruptive to their own comfort or agenda. They don't process your sadness or fear as something requiring compassionate presence or support. They perceive it as a hurdle, a disruption to their desired state of comfort or their need for control. This emotional vacancy isn't just difficult to comprehend, it's profoundly dangerous. Because individuals who lack empathy often view other people not as unique individuals with inherent worth, dignity, and complex inner lives, but primarily as tools. You are deemed useful, or you are deemed irrelevant. That's often the binary perspective. This is distinct from ordinary selfishness. Selfish individuals can still feel guilt about causing harm. They can still experience regret. A psychopath typically does not. To them, your emotions are simply data points, information to study, analyze, potentially manipulate, or even weaponize later if it serves their purpose. You will often notice this lack of empathy manifesting in subtle, yet deeply unsettling ways. You might be grieving the loss of a loved one, sharing your profound sadness, and they make an inappropriate joke or dismiss your feelings entirely. You might be recounting a deeply painful experience that shattered you, and they appear visibly bored rather than moved or concerned. These aren't merely signs of emotional immaturity or awkwardness. They are critical windows into a mind that operates on a fundamentally different emotional frequency than yours. You might find yourself trying harder and harder to make them understand, thinking that if you just explain your feelings differently, perhaps show more intense emotion, they will finally get it. But often they won't. They can't. Even their closest relationships suffer from this inherent lack of emotional depth. They can astonishingly mimic love, connection, and concern, sometimes for months or even years, but eventually, the effort of maintaining the facade becomes too great, or your usefulness begins to wane, and the mask slips. They may grow visibly irritated by your entirely normal human need for genuine emotional connection. They become cold, distant, and you are left reeling, wondering what changed so drastically. The painful truth is that nothing truly changed within them. You simply stopped serving their purpose, or the performance became too exhausting for them to maintain consistently. And when you do show genuine vulnerability, the kind that comes from trust and a belief in shared humanity, they often don't meet it with compassion. Instead, they store it away like ammunition. That deeply personal thing you confessed during a late-night conversation, the secret you shared when you mistakenly believed you were in a safe space, is now filed away in their psychological arsenal. One day, perhaps when you are already hurting, or at your lowest point, they will deploy it, twisting it and using it against you to inflict shame, break your spirit, or exert control. That chilling moment often reveals everything you need to know about their true nature. Stoic philosophy offers a powerful lens through which to view this painful reality. The Roman philosopher Seneca wisely observed, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." When you are in a relationship with someone who lacks empathy, your own natural human imagination will often desperately try to fill in the vast emotional gaps you sense. You want to believe they care deeply. You will grasp onto crumbs of attention or mimicked concern, and tragically interpret them as genuine love, mistaking their cold analysis of your emotions for true concern. But Stoicism teaches you the crucial practice of grounding yourself in objective reality, in what is, not what you desperately wish were true. If someone repeatedly meets your expressions of pain, vulnerability, or need with indifference, impatience, or self-serving calculations, it is vital to believe their consistent behavior. Stop chasing the potential for empathy that isn't present. Instead, observe and believe their patterns. What is entirely within your control in this situation is your own emotional clarity and truth. Pay close attention to how you genuinely feel when you are around this person, not just during moments of superficial charm or flattery, but especially when you are feeling vulnerable or low. Do they naturally lean in with warmth, genuine concern, and presence? Or do they withdraw, become annoyed, or subtly use your feelings as leverage or a weakness to exploit? Stop waiting endlessly for empathy to miraculously appear where it demonstrably does not exist. Protect your own emotional truth and reality. Do not expend your precious energy trying to fix someone who doesn't even recognize that a problem exists within themselves. So ask yourself honestly, have you ever been in a relationship where you felt profoundly emotionally alone, even when the other person was physically present? Where you shared something deeply personal, your soul laid bare, and in return received a cold lecture, a dismissive comment, or even a smirk? Did it ever feel as though your pain was being clinically studied instead of compassionately shared? If any of that resonates on a deep level, it's a significant indicator. Understanding this isn't just about intellectual knowledge, it's about taking back your power. It's about becoming someone who can see clearly, act wisely to protect yourself, and safeguard your inner peace. Sign number 4. Parasitic lifestyle and systematic exploitation of others. This sign often begins so subtly that you don't even fully realize what's happening until you're significantly entangled. It might start with seemingly small requests, needing to borrow your car just for the day. A planned week-long stay that gradually stretches into months, or suggesting a shared credit card for emergencies that only they seem to have. They rarely frame these requests as simply taking from you. Instead, they couch them in language that sounds like partnership, mutual support, shared goals, or building a future together. But beneath the polished language, the truth is significantly darker. You are not in a genuine partnership. You are being systematically harvested for resources. This is the 4th unmistakable sign you might be dealing with a psychopath, a deeply ingrained parasitic lifestyle characterized by the systematic exploitation of others. This isn't just someone who occasionally needs a helping hand during a tough time. This describes someone who has built a fundamental lifestyle out of using other people as stepping stones or resources to extract from. They view your time, your money, your energy, your space, your connections, your skills, essentially everything you possess or are, not as yours, but as theirs to access, drain, and ultimately discard when no longer useful. Consider someone like Erin, who might be incredibly charismatic and full of boundless ambition. She's constantly spinning exciting ideas about new business ventures, exotic travel plans, or grand schemes for the future. At first, being around her feels inspiring. She makes you believe life could be bigger, more thrilling, more expansive. But every one of those exciting dreams seems to consistently come with a catch, a price that you end up paying. There's always an unforeseen roadblock, an investor who unexpectedly backed out, a sudden family emergency that requires financial assistance, or a temporary cash flow issue. And you, the empathetic, supportive person, are positioned as the convenient solution every single time. She expertly frames each request not as her needing help, but as an exciting opportunity for both of you to build something amazing together. So you might lend her a small sum of money. She promises repayment next week, then next month, which eventually transforms into never. You might offer your couch for a few nights. Before you fully grasp what's happening, she's effectively moved in, ceased contributing financially or otherwise, and has subtly but surely made your home feel more like hers than yours. Crucially, these violations of boundaries and resources rarely occur all at once in a way that would immediately trigger alarm bells. They creep in gradually, one small boundary crossed after another, normalizing the taking. The core difference between a psychopath and a merely selfish person is that psychopaths don't just take. They often genuinely believe they are entitled to what they take. They don't perceive your sacrifices, your generosity, or your support as acts of kindness. They often view them as long overdue debts the world, and specifically you, owe them. And critically, they feel not a single ounce of remorse, guilt, or shame when they leave you emotionally, financially, or physically drained. To them, People are fundamentally resources: emotional resources, financial resources, social resources, even physical resources. Like leeches, they skillfully attach themselves, proceed to suck the life and resources out of you, and then detach and drop off the second you are no longer providing value or resisting their exploitation. This parasitic behavior often follows a predictable formula. First, they idealize you, making you feel like you are everything they have ever searched for, showering you with attention and flattery, the love bombing we discussed earlier. Then, once you are securely pulled into their orbit, they begin the slow, insidious process of devaluing you. They subtly question your judgment, mock your goals or aspirations, make unfavorable comparisons between you and others, systematically chipping away at your confidence and self-worth. And finally, once they have extracted everything they wanted or the extraction becomes too difficult, they abruptly and coldly discard you, often right at a moment when you are most vulnerable or most need their support. However, they rarely leave without attempting to keep some kind of subtle string attached. Perhaps they retain access to your streaming service password, continue using your shared ride-sharing account, or keep a spare key to your place, just in case. These aren't mere oversights or absent-mindedness. They are calculated tactics, deliberate tools they might potentially use to extract further resources or favors from you in the future. Meanwhile, you are left not just financially depleted, but deeply emotionally hollowed out. You question your own instincts, doubt your worthiness, and agonize over how you possibly didn't see this coming despite the warning signs. The difficult truth is that individuals with psychopathic traits are often remarkably skilled at identifying and targeting people who are most likely to give generously. They look for traits like high empathy, success, which implies resources, or recent vulnerability. Perhaps you've just ended a long relationship, are navigating a period of grief or loss, or are starting over in life. They read these cues like experienced predators spotting vulnerable prey, and they proceed without shame or hesitation. In their distorted logic, if you were smart enough or strong enough, you wouldn't have allowed yourself to be exploited. They effectively blame you for the harm they inflict upon you. Psychologically, they operate with a profoundly hollow sense of self, which is often masked by outward grandiosity, arrogance, or relentless charm. They don't form authentic, deep emotional bonds with others. They form transactional attachments that exist solely to serve a specific purpose or fulfill a need. If you cease serving that purpose, your value to them drops to zero instantly. This is precisely where Stoic philosophy can function as a powerful shield. The philosopher Epictetus wisely stated, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." A psychopath's underlying hunger for control, stimulation, resources, admiration is often endless and insatiable. No amount of love, help, money, or support you provide will ever truly be enough for them, because what they fundamentally desire isn't connection, it's control and extraction. You cannot possibly outgive their void. You cannot fix the emptiness within them by sacrificing yourself, but you absolutely can protect your own resources and your own sense of self. Stoicism teaches us to prioritize our inner peace and integrity above external possessions or the need for validation from others. When someone in your life repeatedly takes more than they give, when your boundaries are constantly being tested, pushed, and violated, your primary responsibility isn't to keep justifying your limits or making yourself smaller. Your responsibility is to hold those boundaries firmly and clearly, not from a place of anger or resentment, but from a place of wisdom and self-respect. Because once you clearly see their pattern of exploitation for what it is, not just occasional inconsiderate behavior, but a deliberate fundamental method of survival that comes at your significant expense, you no longer owe them unlimited access to your life, your energy, or your resources. Recognize the exploitation for what it is. Reclaim your physical space, your valuable time, your hard-earned money, and most importantly, your self-respect. Because to someone with psychopathic traits, your innate generosity is simply another resource waiting to be exploited. The longer you hesitate to draw a firm line, the more they will attempt to take. The sooner you see this pattern for what it is, the sooner you can decisively walk away with what remains of your life and self-worth intact. Sign number 5. Impulsivity and chronic refusal to take responsibility. There's a distinct type of person whose life perpetually seems to be teetering on the very edge of chaos. No job or commitment ever seems to last. Their romantic history reads like a long, sad trail of broken promises and abandoned relationships. They tell endless stories filled with drama, betrayal by others, unfair treatment, and constant bad luck. Yet, the single consistent thread running through every narrative is that somehow, none of it is ever their fault. Spend enough time entangled with such a person, and you'll inevitably find yourself drawn into cleaning up messes you didn't create, carrying burdens that aren't yours to bear, and even apologizing for things you never actually did. This pervasive pattern is the 5th and often final warning sign that you may be dealing with a psychopath. Profound impulsivity coupled with a chronic, deeply ingrained refusal to take any responsibility for their actions or the consequences they create. Unlike the slower, more calculated manipulation seen in earlier signs, this pattern can often feel almost frantic and chaotic. Psychopaths frequently crave intense stimulation with the desperation a drowning person craves air. Boredom is often unbearable to them. Routine feels suffocating. As a result, they relentlessly chase the next thrill, the next intense experience, regardless of the fallout. This might manifest as spontaneously quitting a job without a backup plan, making impulsive cross-country moves, engaging in reckless financial risks, or jumping into intense, volatile relationships. They tend to live purely in the moment with little to no genuine regard for how their choices and actions will inevitably affect others. The resulting destruction and fallout are simply left in their wake, like jagged broken glass that others are forced to navigate. Consider Jason. At first glance, he might be magnetic, captivating, and full of grand ideas. He's always enthusiastically talking about his big plans, revolutionary new ventures, and exciting concepts. But beneath the surface charm and bluster lies a consistent, predictable trail of destruction. He bounces from one seemingly brilliant startup idea to the next, never seeing any of them through to completion. He borrows money from friends or family with easy promises of quick repayment, which never materializes. He crashes at people's places significantly longer than invited, wearing out his welcome but remaining oblivious or indifferent to the imposition. And when things inevitably fall apart, he spins the same weary narrative every time. It wasn't his fault. Investors pulled out unfairly. His ex was too controlling and stifled his genius. His boss just didn't appreciate his revolutionary vision. This is what makes this particular pattern so uniquely destructive and frustrating. It's not merely the chaos they generate, it's the absolute denial of their role in creating it. Most people, when they make a mistake or cause harm, experience some level of reflection, guilt, or remorse. They attempt to make amends, or at least learn from the experience. Psychopaths generally do not. They possess an almost magical ability to instantly rewrite reality in their own favor, effortlessly casting themselves as the innocent victim in every scenario, no matter how obvious their culpability. They seem allergic to accountability, and they perform this denial so convincingly that you might find yourself, incredibly, believing them, defending them, and making excuses for them, even as their behavior slowly erodes your peace, drains your energy, and negatively impacts your life. Psychologically, this pattern reveals something far deeper than simple immaturity or poor habits. It reflects a profoundly fractured internal moral compass, where immediate personal pleasure, stimulation, or gain consistently outweighs the well-being, stability, or feelings of others. There appears to be no internal brake system, no meaningful pause between a desire or impulse and the action taken. They act first and only reluctantly deal with consequences, if at all, when they are absolutely forced to, typically by external circumstances finally catching up to them. And even then, the blame is never truly placed upon themselves. This chronic lack of responsibility isn't random, it's functionally strategic. It allows them to perpetually keep moving, on to the next person, the next scheme, the next source of stimulation or resources. without carrying the heavy emotional weight of guilt, without needing to engage in genuine repair of relationships or situations, and without ever truly reflecting on their destructive impact. Here again, Stoic philosophy offers invaluable clarity when faced with this particular brand of chaos. Chrysippus, one of the great Stoic thinkers, noted that he who errs in action errs in judgment. When you are caught up in someone else's relentless storm of self-inflicted chaos, it's incredibly easy to internalize the irrationality around you. You might begin to feel like the dysfunction is somehow your fault, that you didn't do enough, weren't supportive enough, weren't understanding enough to help them stabilize. But Stoicism teaches you the critical practice of separating yourself from another person's inherent dysfunction. Their erratic choices, their constant need for drama, their refusal to be accountable. These are not your burdens to carry or your problems to solve. You cannot possibly find lasting peace attempting to hold together the life of someone who fundamentally thrives on disorder and chaos. When someone's life is a continuous, self-inflicted cycle of damage and drama, when they spin out of control, repeatedly and simply expect you to catch them, clean up after them and rescue them every single time, it's not just instability, it's often profound entitlement. You will notice this entitlement in the way they seem to demand forgiveness without ever offering a sincere apology, the expectation of commitment from you without offering any consistency themselves, the assumption of your support and resources without ever contributing meaningfully in return. You will hear it in their carefully constructed stories where they are invariably the wronged party and never ever responsible for the negative outcomes. And you will feel it deeply in the sheer exhaustion of constantly having to explain away their behavior to others, or even to yourself. The intense discomfort and guilt they attempt to project onto you when you finally attempt to assert a boundary. And the emotional weight of being blamed simply for trying to protect your own peace. There is also something deeply disorienting about their emotional volatility, which is tied to this impulsivity and lack of responsibility. They can swing dramatically, from being incredibly playful, charming, and affectionate one moment, to being cold, cruel, or explosive the next. These dramatic shifts often appear most intensely the moment they are held even slightly accountable for their actions, or when the natural, unavoidable consequences of their behavior finally become too real for them to ignore. This isn't a simple mood swing. It's often a defense mechanism, a frantic attempt to deflect blame or escape the uncomfortable feeling of consequence. When faced with the undeniable truth of their actions, they might lash out in explosive anger, abruptly disappear from your life entirely, or seemingly transform into someone you barely recognize in an attempt to evade responsibility. The suddenness and jarring nature of this change are designed to make you doubt your memory and question who you believed they truly were. The path forward in such a situation is not to try and fix them. They are not typically looking to be fixed, because they don't see their behavior as a problem in the first place. They see it as a functional way of life that serves them. The path is to free yourself from their destructive orbit, because no matter how much compassion you extend, how many second chances you offer, or how desperately you try to hold on to the person you wanted them to be, they are unlikely to change in any meaningful, lasting way. Not because they are incapable of change in an absolute sense, but because they typically lack the internal motivation, the idea of growing up, embracing accountability, or choosing stability over manufactured chaos holds no genuine appeal to them. The very behaviors that cause devastation in your life are often the ones they rely on to feel alive, powerful, or stimulated. You must see this reality for what it is, not an unfortunate character flaw or a series of mistakes, but a fundamental way of operating in the world that will inevitably pull you down and cause significant harm if you remain too close. Practicing Stoic detachment here doesn't mean hardening your heart or becoming uncaring. It means wisely protecting your own peace, stability, and well-being. It means internalizing the profound truth that compassion for another person's struggles or flaws does not obligate you to become collateral damage in their perpetually self-inflicted disaster. You are not responsible for fixing what they continually and seemingly deliberately choose to break. If any of these signs, these patterns, felt painfully familiar or resonated deeply, please know that you are not alone, and you are absolutely not crazy. You have simply seen behind the mask, glimpsed the underlying operating system that is fundamentally different from your own. And with that clear sight comes incredible power. Don't wait for further damage to be inflicted. Prioritize protecting your peace. Trust your gut instincts when something feels fundamentally off.